Welcome once again to another edition of Cup of Joe. My name is Joe Howard. I'm the executive editor here at Transport Topics, and I'm joined once again by my esteemed colleagues, Seth Clevenger, managing editor for features, and Michael Fries, features editor, for this edition of Cup of Joe. So this week we are talking technology, and we are talking telematics and trailer tracking and all of the myriad technologies that have made their way into the trucking industry in fairly short order. I was thinking about this leading into this episode, gentlemen, and it's funny because on the one hand, it feels like we've been covering telematics forever, but we really haven't because it hasn't been around that long. I think part of the reason that we feel like we keep covering this segment is because there's so much growth, so much expansion. Every time we turn around, something new is coming out. And I think that is on some level fueled by the capability of the technology itself. I always circle back to this one event I covered, some years back, where one of the engineers or one of the developers, I should say, at some OEM event, made the point that we are pulling so much data off of this vehicle that that we're just coming up with things to offer our customers. I mean, it was almost like they were, I hate to say, backing into all of these services, but in a way, they were doing what you're supposed to do with data, learning from it. They were taking the information and saying, look at all that we have here. We can offer our customers X, Y, and Z. And I think, and that just continues. So it never ceases to amaze me. And Seth, I'll start with you. How much technology is giving and will continue to give the trucking industry.
Yeah, for sure. And data is really kind of like the currency or the raw materials that you need to you know develop better business intelligence, data analytics, and really see where your opportunities to improve are. And that's been a story that's been taking place over the last few decades. I mean, you could really we're talking about telematics, you can really trace it back to the late 80s with Qualcomm introducing the first in-cab communication system. So suddenly you're tracking vehicle location, you can communicate remotely with your drivers, you can have more of a better grasp of your fleet, and that opens up new possibilities for fleet management. And of course, back at that time, it was a select number of mostly large carriers that were sort of technology forward, early adopters. But you fast forward to today, and it's amazing how far we've come in the past few decades. I mean, today is everything from, it's not just monitoring the vehicle and driver performance. It's also in-cab driver coaching, like how fuel efficiently are you driving? How safe are you driving? Tracking hard brakes, and video is a part of that. Increasingly, capturing video of the vehicle surroundings, for liability protection with the nuclear verdicts we're seeing, and insurance costs just skyrocketing in the trucking industry. And of course, we've seen the federal ELD mandate really push this forward. So it's not just the biggest of the big carriers and even the mid-sized carriers that are using telematics. It's now virtually the entire industry on some level. And of course, the ELD mandate is focused on hours of service information, electronically capturing the drive time, and doing that electronically by syncing with the engine rather than relying on a paper logbook. But if you're going to install a system like that, why not also take advantage of some of the basic telematics functionality that's available? So even owner operators, small fleets, are getting some of those capabilities and some of those benefits that the early adopters in the late 80s and into the 90s were seeing, but now that's trickled down really throughout the whole industry. And the OEMs you mentioned earlier, of course, have been a part of this as well. They've introduced and they've expanded their embedded telematics hardware for remote diagnostics capabilities. So a lot of these vehicles are shipped with factory installed telematics hardware to support vehicle maintenance. If there's an engine fault code, it's not just a matter of getting back to the terminal or breaking down on the side of the road and then being towed and figuring out what happened. You're very closely monitoring the vehicle health as you go, and you're communicating proactively with the back office and even
Mhm.
with your dealers. Maybe the next dealer coming up down the road. So if it's a critical fault that needs to be addressed right away, uh, you can do that proactively and prevent downtime. So those are just a few examples of how this has all blossomed from those early days of just tracking vehicles and having some insight into what's happening out there. And it's amazing how blind uh,
Mhm.
fleet managers were before the technology enabled all this. But now it's in-cab systems, it's onboard sensors on the truck and the trailer, it's remote diagnostic systems, and also the driver's own smartphones and personal devices, mobile devices are tying into this. So there's so much more data at our fingertips. And